Hello, learner. Welcome to Mr. Quickest Teachers. In this lesson, I'll be analyzing Tony Harrison's poem From Long Distance. I'll speak about his attitude towards his father after the death of his mother and the difference between how he's grieving and how his father also grieves as well. So we are going to see the varied nature of their grief. And then we also see that he's quite judgmental towards his father, his attitude towards his father as his father grieves. So I'll speak about the themes, the theme of death, grief. Those are key themes. I'll talk about the tone of the poem, the mood, the figures of speech that's used in the poem, the other figurative devices that is used by Harrison to strikingly present the persona's attitude towards his father after his mother's death. Let's dive in. Now, let's begin by speaking about the poet Tony Harrison. He was born in Beeston, Leeds on the 30th of April 1937. He's an English poet, translator, and playwright. He attended Leeds Grammar School and Leeds University. He's one of Britain's foremost verse writers, and many of his works have been performed at the Royal National Theatre. In 2015, he was honored with the David Cohen Prize in recognition of his body of work. And in 2016, he was awarded the Premio Feronia in Rome. So that's a brief account of the poet Tony Harrison. Now, this is how the poem appears in your anthology. It's a 4-quatrain stanza poem. So each of the stanzas have 4 lines, and then you see how it appears on the page as well. Also has a rhyme scheme. I'll talk about those in the elements of literature beats of the analysis. Now let's begin the analysis first. I'll talk about the title as well, but first let's read the poem, or let me read the poem. From Long Distance by Tony Harrison. Though my mother was already 2 years dead, that kept her sleepers warming by the gas, put hot water bottles her side of the bed, and still went to renew her transport pass. You couldn't just drop in. You had to phone. He'd put you off an hour to give him time to clear away her things and look alone, as though his still raw love were such a crime. He couldn't risk my blight of disbelief, though sure that very soon he would hear a key scrape in the rusted lock and end his grief. He knew she just popped out to get the tea. I believe life ends with death, and that's all. You haven't both gone shopping, just the same. In my new black leather phone book, there's your name and the disconnected number I still call. Now, the first thing I want to speak about is the title of the poem. So, the title From Long Distance is a metaphor that aptly highlights the unbridgeable divide that materializes or that comes into effect after a person dies. So we see there's this chasm, right? Chasm that is created between the living and then the dead. And in this instance, it's between the poetic voice father and his mother. So there's that I think is like an allusion to it. Now the title also alludes to the modern idea of calling somebody long distance. Now that's a term that's usually used to describe a call to a far-flung country or continent. So the poetic voice confesses that he still calls. We see that in the last line of the poem. He still calls his dead parents' number. That's what we see. So that again is another allusion. So in terms of the title, if you're thinking about the title of the poem. Now, on some level, the title From Long Distance also touches on the idea of a long distance relationship, and we see that in the attitude of both, especially his father's attitude towards his mother. So a long distance relationship, which is when a couple dates when they are physically away from each other. So that is also, I don't know if that's an allusion as well that Harrison is trying to present in terms of the personas, the father of the persona's attitude towards his wife. So it's like they have a long distance relationship, even though the man is and I'll talk about the grief. He's in denial about the death of his wife. Finally, From Long Distance is an appropriate title for the poem because death, which is a key theme in the poem, causes separation between the living and the dead. That is impossible to span because neither the living nor the dead can reach each other. So the living cannot reach the dead, and the dead can also not reach the living as well. Now, this explanation shows that death is the most permanent form of separation known to man. So it's like the most powerful. Any other distance in most instances can be bridged, but not death. Now, Harrison opens the poem by revealing the first two lines. Though my mother was already 2 years dead, that kept the sleepers warming by the gas. Now, the conjunction though, which is the first word of the poem, injects dramatic tension into his revelation and communicates that other events have taken place before now that he's only now exposing to the reader. So other events have taken place. Additionally, his use of though as the first word of the sentence and essentially the poem signals that there will be contrasting information in the later part. Furthermore, he speaks with a tone of finality. There's this tone of finality, like something that, is agreed to. So when he says, my mother was already 2 years dead, which suggests that, now, this is very, very important. He's experienced all the earlier stages of grief. So now, this is very important in the poem because grief is like a key theme, apart from the theme of death. So when it comes to grief, there are 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Now, it appears here that the poetic voice is already at the 5th, or expressing the 5th, when he says, though my mother was already 2 years dead. Now, he doesn't euphemize his mother's death. So that tells us that he's accepted the fact that she's no longer here. She's deceased. Now, moreover, his use of the first person pronoun my tells that he's speaking in the first person about his personal experience. So he's speaking here about his mother, right? Maybe his biological mother. And he tells the reader that it is actually his biological mother that is dead. Now, additionally, Harrison referring to the deceased female persona as mother instead of mom suggests that they share the very traditional relationship. I mean, this may be uncertain. That's why I use the word suggest. So the kind in which a child is very differential to their parent. That is the modern type where, it's not like the modern type where there's this parent-child relationship that they behave as if they are friends. He's very, very differential towards her. He's very, very respectful towards her. That's why he uses the word mother. But alternatively, mother also creates the impression that the relationship between them was very formal. But then it could also be simply, there's nothing to it. It could also be simply mean that that's what in their generation they refer to their parents or their mother, their female parent as mother. So the 2 other explanations may be irrelevant to it. It could be that in that generation, they just refer to their female parents as mother. So it could be that he had a close relationship with her and whatnot. But then these are some of the explanations that that came to mind when he referred to his mother, his deceased female parent as mother. Now, the 4th word that Harrison uses in the line, already, that word, the 5th word, already. So, though my mother was already, suggests that he thinks that time has gone very quickly. So, the time has gone very quickly. It's sped off. So, time has passed. And then he already implies that he considers the amount of time that has passed since his mother's death as a reasonably long time to mourn. So it could be that it went very quickly, or it's a reasonably long time to mourn. While 2 years reveals exactly how long ago she died. So 2 years tells the reader exactly how long ago she died. So they can sort of make an educated guess on how long ago she died. Now, the poetic voice's attitude is shocking because while some people may consider 2 years a long time to go through the entire grieving process, others would see it as too short a time to grieve a loved one. But then it appears here that he thinks that 2 years is adequate time. But especially a spouse, or in this case, a parent. I mean, most people, parents that they love, they'll think of 2 years as an extremely short time. Now, the final word of the line, the first line, dead, introduces the theme of death and highlights the finality of the poetic voice's mother's condition. So it tells us that nothing can be done for her. Her situation cannot be changed. She's dead. Death also brings into focus the mortality of humans. So mortality here, in terms of the theme of death, is also brought up by the last word of the first line, dead. Now, for the reader, however, the poet's use of the word dead to describe his mother's state comes as a shock, because people tend to euphemize the passing of a loved one to reduce the sting. So people can say, for example, my mom is no longer with us. And the sense is that it's almost as if she's going to come back. But he uses the word dead there. So he doesn't euphemize his mother's death to remove the sting. Now, Harrison's decision to speak so directly about his mother's death shows that he has accepted it. And he understands that he will never see her again, at least not in this world. In fact, later on we see that he says, I believe that life ends with that and that's all. So I don't think he even believes in the afterlife. Right? So this explanation reinforces the idea that he's experiencing the final stage of grief. So my mother is 2 years dead. I mean, that's the end of it. She lived and now she's no more. Now, let's look at the use of enjambment in line 1, from line 1 to line 2. So Harrison drops into the second line of the stanza from the first with enjambment. This is seen in the flow of words from one line to the next without pause. Now, his use of enjambment allows him to show the unbroken link that still exists between his dead mother and his living father. Additionally, his decision not to use a comma, and I observe that he doesn't use a comma in the first two lines. He could have said, though my mother was already 2 years dead, comma, that kept his slippers warming by the gas. But then we see here that he refuses to use a comma. It's a deliberate decision. So additionally, his decision not to use a comma in the first line, which would have made the first line a clearer dependent clause, tells that he was in a rush to complete his sentence and put his point or make his point. He begins the second line with the word dad, which introduces a second parent, here a second persona, apart from the poetic voice. Furthermore, he's referring to his male parent as dad, suggests that they share a close informal relationship. And now think of this, I know it's amplified by his referring to his mother, his mother as mother. Maybe mom, would have been a more informal sense, but he refers to his father here as dad. So I don't know if maybe then people do not refer to their fathers as father, but then there's this informality that is injected here. So I suspect that he's closer to his father than his mother. He continues the line by revealing that his dad kept his slippers warming by the gas. Now, what we are going to see in the remainder of the first stanza are three things that his father continues to do even though his mother is dead. Right? And the first is kept his slippers warming by the gas. Now, the word kept shows that his father's actions, or the action of his father, was deliberate. It's the deliberate action, because if you keep something, it's deliberate. While her is a third person pronoun for his deceased mother. Furthermore, kept the slippers warming by the gas is striking because it tells that his father consciously and regularly placed his deceased mother's indoor footwear, slippers, where it will be warmed, right? Where it will be warmed in readiness for when she would wear it. So it's a deliberate action if she wants to wear it, let me keep it where it will be warm so that when she wears it, it's going to be comfy. Right? Kept the slippers warming also suggests that his dad may have been acting with muscle knowledge. It's possible that that's what he's been doing for years for his wife. And even though she's dead, he's in denial and he continues to do it. Right? So he just does it out of muscle knowledge. Now, the regularity of his father's action is emphasized by Harrison's use of warming, which is present continuous. So that kept his slippers warming. It's still there as he speaks. So he's doing it. He's doing it even now as he speaks. Also, Harrison's dad's decision to keep his deceased wife's slippers warming by the gas presents him as a thoughtful and caring husband, because only someone with those traits would see the need to ready a comfortable pair of slippers for when their significant other would need it. So that presents his father here as someone that is rather thoughtful. Moreover, the fact that he needs to warm the sleepers by the gas communicates that they live in a cold climate, presumably in a temperate region, maybe like the UK. Now, gas here is used as a reference to the source of heat. Now, figuratively, however, the poet uses warming by the gas as a metaphor for the warmth of love that his father continues to show to his deceased mother or to his dead mother. So we have the literal meaning of kept the sleepers warming by the gas, which literally means he's just keeping the sleepers there to make it comfy. But then it could also be that, metaphorically, that his father still shows love to his mother even though she's dead. Explanation of the alliteration in stanza 1, lines 1 and 2. Now, in the first and second lines of the stanza, Harrison uses alliteration twice when he speaks about his mother and dad. The alliteration is seen in the quotes, my mother and dad and dead dad, right? Which sees the repetition of the M and the D sounds. So hello, learner. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson so far. This is a sample video analysis of this poem. To access the full analysis, purchase it or the entire course with detailed analysis of all the 15 poems, the elements of literature in each poem, and IGCSE style questions, both passage-based and general. There are also A-star quality sample essays as well at mrquickesteaches.com. Find the links in the description. See you in class.